Hi, this is Carl Merkel. Can you hear me?
Oh, hi, Carl. Thank you.
Hi, I thought I could get on Teams, but I'm having laptop difficulties, so I'm on the phone.
Okay.
Okay, we will go ahead and get this meeting called to order at 5:04 p.m. We'll start with roll call. Jordan, myself, I am here. Christy?
Here.
Okay. Valerie?
Here.
Asa?
Here.
Carl?
Here.
I can't hear anything.
Kate?
Just the chat.
Here.
I'm still getting no audio.
We can hear you.
Here?
Mitch? Here. You are here. Jennifer?
Here.
Andrea?
Here.
And Pamela?
Here.
I think that's the first time all 10 of us have been here. All right, good job, everyone. All right, we will hop right into old business with approval of September 2024 RAB minutes. I will entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
I'll second the motion. Andrea.
Who made the motion? I didn't hear.
I'm sorry, Andrea Summerall. Can you not hear me?
We can hear you. I just didn't hear at first.
Okay.
Well, I'll take
This is
my
Pam.
motion.
I'll second.
Okay.
Kate's coming in right now.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Is there any discussion? Okay, not hearing any, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, all those opposed say nay. Not hearing any, motion passes. Pass it over to Megan for the rest of the old business.
So we've got a number of actions on the screen right now. I'm gonna go through most of those. There's two of them that I have a couple slides on, and I'll identify those as we go through. Okay, so going right down the line, researching guidance on RAB meeting recordings in the administrative record. So RAB meetings, like recordings of RAB meetings, they can be in the administrative record. There is no requirement for a recording to be in the administrative record. The RAB meeting minutes are considered the basically the record in circle guidance. So we're going to continue to host the meeting minutes on the administrative record, and we also are going to continue to host the RAB meeting recordings on our RAB website. If there's any folks that need that website link, please feel free to type up in the chat and we can get that link to you. If needed, we can also pop that link into this meeting's minutes as well. On the next one, there was a question over whether there was a requirement for public review to be held for the supplemental remedial investigation. So the answer is no, there is not a requirement under CERCLA to have a public review of the supplemental remedial investigation. There are required public reviews for two documents. That's the proposed plan, which comes after the supplemental remedial investigation. And there's also required public review of the engineering evaluation. And, oh, I'm sorry, we actually do have a slide of this and I'm just talking straight through it. So we'll still show the slide. Sorry, folks. I'm a little bandstand here. Okay. There's also a requirement for the engineering evaluation and cost analysis on the non-time critical removal action for that particular document to have a public review as well. Just for clarity, the circular requirement for a public review is a period of time, I believe it's 60 days, where the public may review a document and comment on it before it is finalized.
Jackie's saying 30 days.
Oh, 30 days. Okay, thank you, Jackie. Thanks for that correction there. So it's a time before the document's actually finalized for the public to review and provide comment. We will still have reviews of, we'll still do like presentations on all these documents as we go through them for like the supplemental remedial investigation or work plans and stuff like that. And then there's also a review available for a technical assistance grant. And I'll go into a little more detail on that. Moving into the next question of passive sampler study. So Valerie Chu had a question about a previous passive sampler study. There are 2 reports in the administrative record, a field report and then a report of the study itself. I sent those links over to Valerie earlier today. If there's any follow-up questions on those, we can certainly take those questions. If there's other folks who would like to see those specific links, again, I can have those added into our meeting minutes today. Moving on to talk about the resident fish advisory signs at boat launches. Dana Crosby and I were chatting a little more about this earlier. She, I believe she had presented this at a previous RAD meeting, but she confirmed for me earlier today that they actually do have plans to put signs at Skamania boat launch and Cascade Locks Marina boat launch. I think those were the 2 that were of most interest at the last meeting. If there's others that are of interest, Dana is the main point of contact who's been working on this for Oregon Health Authority. There is another person, Emerson Christie, who's been working on this on behalf of Washington Health. And then we'll talk a little bit more about where the Corps has been putting up signs and materials on the.
I'd like to add to that. This is Pam. Herman Creek Overlook.
Say Hermit Creek Overlook is of interest.
Herman Creek. I'm sorry, Eagle Creek Overlook.
Eagle Creek Overlook, yeah. Okay. I know Eagle Creek Campground has put a sign in, and I believe Dana Crosby has also been in touch with those folks. But I don't know if there's additional, Dana, I'm not sure if there's additional places around the campground or the creek that you're looking at. I know also I've been talking with our rangers at Bonneville, and they are trying to make contact with the Forest Service about putting up a sign on their bulletin board, which is like the head area by the restrooms over there at Eagle Creek. Dina, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Okay,
Sure.
Dan says.
Yeah,
go
sorry,
ahead, Dan.
Oh, sorry, I was struggling to find my unmute button. But yes, we are going out to the Eagle Creek area next week, and we're going to look at the whole site and talk about just the exact places where it would be great to have some signage installed. So that's very much in progress, which is awesome. We're really excited to go out there and just kind of walk the area. So that's an update for the Eagle Creek area, and we're still working on the Washington side, including Port of Skamania and other locations as well. And then on the Oregon side, we are working on the Cascade Locks Marina, and I think those are the locations that are coming to mind first. But we've got a list that I can share of some potential install places if that's helpful with the group.
And I did just want to clarify for folks, especially any of those who haven't been a part of these conversations before. A lot of these locations that we talk about are private land, so it is ultimately up to those landowners to give us permission to post those. That's obviously different on court property, but when we talk about certain other areas outside court property, we're looking for folks to kind of partner with us on that, and we certainly can't force it on them.
Pam posted some photos in the chat. I don't know, Pam, did you want to talk about those?
Yeah, sure. I was just also writing up a little snip here. I went to the dam and looked at the sign. I think it looks great. I feel it's kind of tucked out in the corner a little bit, so you don't see it when you walk in. It's next to the boating instructions, which is fine. I'm just pointing that out. And also, I wanted to point out again this platform that is just to the east of Eagle Creek Overlook. So if you walk down on the river and just walk on the bank around the corner, there's a fishing platform. And I visited with folks that sell the salmon underneath Bridge of the Gods, and they didn't really know anything about there being any hazards there. And I showed them the sign at the dam in one of these pictures, and they were a little perplexed. So I don't think if you say that Nez Pierce knows about contamination, I don't know that it's being trickled down to the folks that actually fish there. So I think it's really important to have signs up, especially in these areas where we see there's activity.
For those pictures, as you are kind of typing, would you be able to kind of just let folks know where those are, and that can help us understand exactly like these areas that you're recommending signage?
Okay. So whenever you walk into the visitor center at the dam, you see, sorry, that's my dog. Hey, so whenever you walk into the dam, there's a visitor's desk on the right-hand side. So in order to see the actual sign about the cleanup, you have to walk forward and to the left past the elevators, and it's against the glass there. So that's where the sign actually is. And I took pictures of it just so people, I don't know if you can share the pictures, but see what the sign said. I know we already knew what was going to be posted, but I think it looks good. The sign itself looks good. And it's two-sided, but one of the sides is against the window. So that's really, it's not functioning, I guess, the way that they had planned. And then the last picture is a picture of a fishing platform, a very active fishing platform that is on the bank that I was just describing. Whenever you walk down at Eagle Creek Overlook, you walk down on the water bank and turn right and just walk a little ways. You can see it and, get closer to it. And I think it's important for the folks that are not being told about the contamination there, about what's going on and the possible effects that it has on human life, especially if they're fishing for themselves and then also selling it to the public. Thank you.
Thanks, ma'am.
Kate Murphy has her hand up.
Yes, Kate.
Thank you. Thanks, Pam, for bringing this up. I believe we spoke about the primary location for this sign was going to be down by the fish viewing window, and then we discussed potentially having a second version up near the kind of the front desk area. But looking at the pictures, it looks like this is kind of like in a back hallway almost, and like Pam pointed out, half of it is pointing towards a window. So I think I know exactly where this is, and it's not a prominent spot if yeah, there's a lot better places we could put that. So
Yeah.
I haven't been out there since the signs went up, but it'd be great to revisit the location of that.
Yeah, I can say I haven't been to the two visitor centers, since they've been put up either. So I will chat with our rangers and see if we can kind of move back to those more prominent spots that we had initially identified. There could be some reason they were put to the side for the time being. Hard to say with what program may or may not go on, but I'll have a chat with those folks and see what our options are for getting that into more visible and prominent spots.
Thanks, Megan.
And the double-sided is intentional, even if one of the sides is usually against a wall. It's so that the stands are mobile, and if they need to be moved, then they can be displayed in other ways.
Are they the exact same on both sides? Is it the
Yes.
same information? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
The other thing, the other thing, Megan, that we should probably consider asking is if for some reason, say if even for a period of time that those posters can't be in a more prominent location or however that gets worked out, maybe at the front, at the entrance, still having some of the, one of the fish advisory posters itself, displayed on the board or somewhere right as they come in. Like I said, the posters were kind of, a combination of project information and identifying about the fish advisory, but we could have something only about the fish advisory as soon as they come in. Maybe we look at that as well.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
I believe the fish advisory is posted at both visitor centers, since before we put up the
Copies of
indicative signs, yeah.
Yeah, we just need to work with them about what exactly they have posted and where for those.
Yeah, we can go take a look tomorrow too. We have a couple comments here. Dana Crosby saying Megan mentioned someone else's name who's working on sign installation. Was it Christy? Christy Emerson. Okay, so she would like their full name and contact info. So we'll take that as an action. Dana. And then Christy is saying, I did email Nez Perce Tribe Fish Commission with this information. Thank you, Pam, for bringing this to my attention. And then Pam says, I visited with the folks that sell their salmon under the Bridge of the Gods, and they were not familiar with the cleanup. Oh, this is what you said, right, Pam?
Yes, just putting it, I had already halfway typed it, so I just posted it also. It's just saying the importance of signage, because sometimes the message isn't, cascaded. Thanks.
Anybody else? Okay, we're caught up.
So we're just gonna move quickly on to the last couple. The second and last regarding this to be a boat launch. Dina already addressed that one. And then the last one that's on there for actions, Cascade Renewable Transmission Project. I have some slides on that, so we'll talk about that in future slides.
All right, the last item for Rev Business is new business. We have a application up for a membership vote. My apologies if I get this name pronounced incorrectly. Sophia Eurita Lopez put in an application, I think not too long after our last meeting. Looks like she works or is part of the Gorge Friends network and provided her application. I'll entertain a motion to appoint Sophia to the RAB.
This is Kate. I will nominate Sophia.
Okay, we'll have Kate motion. Mitch, you want a second?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, any discussion on this application? Right, not hearing any, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye, okay, that sounds unanimous. Megan, we reach out to Sophia and get her connected and up to speed and all that fun jazz.
Yep,
Perfect.
I will send her some information and get her started.
Perfect. All right, and I'll kick it back over to you now.
Hey, great. All right, so we talked about this one a little bit earlier, forgetting I had a slide on it, but just to reiterate there's the proposed plan and the engineering evaluation cost analysis for the non-time critical removal action are two documents that will have a formal public review period. So 30 days before it's finalized, where the public will review, can provide comment. For our other documents, such as the supplemental remedial investigation, we will have RAB presentations of these. We'll talk about the contents. And there's another facet of this is the technical assistance grant. So Columbia River Keepers was awarded the technical assistance grant by EPA. That allows them to bring on a consultant, which will be able to, the consultant will be able to review documents like the supplemental remedial investigation at the same time as regulators. So it is their duty as part of receiving technical assistance grant is to review that information and then present back to the RAB their findings, their comments. Of course, we'll submit their comments to the board as well. And those will be considered and responded to as part of, or considered and resolved as part of the normal review process. That's about all I had to talk about on that particular question. Were there any follow-up questions?
Kate has her hand up.
Kate's got her hand.
Yeah, two things. One is, do we have timing? And maybe you mentioned this, but do we have timing on these two public reviews yet?
So certainly not for the proposed plan, I'm afraid. Proposed plan is out like beyond the supplemental remedial investigation.
Okay.
So that will be some time away. It'll be after we complete the non-time critical removal action and all the work plans that we are developing and actioning those work plans now. Like when all of that's resolved, the proposed plan will still be beyond both all those different parts and pieces. For the non-time critical removal action, so I have a update on that one a little bit further in the slides. Where we are at this point is that the regulators and tribes are reviewing that. I might be misspeaking on that because I'm just going off of memory there. So if it's okay, Kate, let me take that question or talk about that that status when we get to that in the slides. So I've got the right info in front of me.
That sounds great. Thanks. And my second question is, what's done with those comments that happened during that public comment period? Like how are those assessed? Is there a response protocol, or is there like what would prompt that public input to be incorporated, say? Yeah, kind of just trying to understand like how that public input will be used.
Jackie, do you have a good like explanation of that? Having your experience kind of talk to that, I think will probably be best in this situation.
Absolutely. So with these ones, both of them kind of serve a similar purpose of, proposing kind of what the action is going to be. For proposed plan, it's what the remedial response is going to be. And for the ECA, it's what the removal action is proposed to be. So during that comment period, there could be input from the public that could be weighed to change what action is being recommended. That's always a possibility. And so as part of that, there's a responsiveness summary that goes into the subsequent document where we reply to substantive comments. So for a proposed plan, that responsiveness summary goes into the record of decision. And for the ECA, that goes into the action memorandum. And that's where in those documents that response is documented to those public comments.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Thanks, Kate. Any other questions before we move on to talk about Cascade renewal transmission? Okay. Let's chat CRT. So I want to go quickly through just like a really brief background for anyone who's not familiar with this project. Cascade's renewal transmission project essentially is intended to be an underground cable which would transfer renewable energies from the Dalles out to Portland. The concept is to bury a cable bundle in the Columbia River. Approximately 10 feet. It could vary from 5 to 15 feet in certain areas, just kind of depending on basically the geology of that particular area. And there's also a sort of an inland bypass around Bonneville Dam. I'll talk about in the next couple of slides like exactly where those are. But essentially it's starting to exit the river around Skamania. It'll go around Bonneville on the Washington side and then enter on the western side of Hamilton. And we'll have some diagrams of that. Jackie?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I would like to mention that the question that came up. So the reason that we're presenting on this is because, you know, this was brought up to us as something that was going on in the area. And the question was, did we know if this impacted the investigation or any action at Bradford Island? And that's kind of where this presentation is, to kind of fill that, to answer that question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, so we'll look at the diagrams, but what we can say pretty definitively at this point is that at the moment it is outside of the bounds of the Bradford Island project.
That kind of speaks to what Pam's asking. Can you explain how this is relevant to the cleanup and what is the timeline for the project?
Yeah, the timeline I can't talk to a lot. I know when we were talking to the folks on the Columbia, excuse me, I'm saying Columbia, when I think about this project, the Cascades Mineral Transmission Project, they were talking about like an ideal, like hopefully as soon as point of an installation being around winter of 2027. Other details on their schedule, I don't have. I did include a couple of links on this slide. So basically, these are the two councils in Oregon and Washington that would think probably most folks' best point of contact for getting good information through their local government about this particular project and how your local governments are engaging in them. They may have some better information about the schedule itself. It seems to be in fairly new stages still. Just kind of looking through their website as well as Oregon and Washington's websites on the project. There's also some information on those two websites about how you can get involved in those councils or when they have meetings on the project. So there's quite a bit more information there. Checking to see if there's anything else we should cover before we move on. Oh, there was a specific question brought up about this in a previous meeting about the end of life for the cables themselves. So it does not sound like the specific end of life like design is actually made at this point. They do have to follow a decommissioning, or they do have to develop a decommissioning plan. That's required by both Oregon and Washington, the two council groups that are listed on this slide.
I know. Go ahead.
Sorry.
Okay, Kate, go ahead.
I'm just wondering about this decommissioning plan. Like, does that? I just don't know that would prevent them from selling it off before they have to decommission it themselves, and it's someone else's problem. does anyone know if a decommissioning plan gets inherited with a sold project? Like, is the buyer required to decommission the project? Or I just, I think there's some concern about them abandoning it once it runs its course and leaving it for someone else to clean up.
Yeah. I certainly don't have the details about what Oregon or Washington require for those decommissioning plans. I think the two organizations there are the best suited to answer that.
Okay, and I guess I still am a little unsure about how we can be definitive about this not affecting the site when we haven't established the full nature and extent of the contamination and have just still have yet to do downstream testing and things like that. So where can someone help me understand where that confidence is coming from?
No, Kate, I think you're correct. As it's more of it doesn't currently impact, and definitely with the upland. I mean, we do have downstream investigation planned. It wouldn't impact that investigation. But yes, there could potentially, if for some reason we found a lot of downstream contamination and that cut through point where it comes out of Hamilton Island.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, that was a great question, and thanks,
But at
Jackie,
this
for the
point, it does not.
clarification. It is very much right now, it's not impacting our project. We know that right now it's not impacting our project. That is not to say that if our boundaries don't change on this project, that it won't have some impact, and that we, at that point, would obviously have to get more involved with those folks. Mitch, somebody had a question.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I think you had mentioned that the transmission line was coming out of the water at Skamania, but it's actually coming out of the water at Stevenson.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for
Yeah.
that.
And from what I've been told, since we heard about this about a year ago or so,
Mhm.
that it was gonna go back into the water again, would be downstream of the golf course at North Bonneville, so it wouldn't even be encompassing anything of Army Corps' property or the port properties. It would be outside of that area. So that's kind of my concern, was trying to figure out if it's coming out of the water in Stevenson, it's so far upstream from Bradford Island, the scope of that, it kind of was a shock to me to hear that it's being brought to the RAB. I don't quite understand why, unless it's because of the Hamilton Island deal.
No, it was a question of whether it would impact Bradford Island. And so we were looking
We weren't
into
sure
it.
at the time where those
determining
lines
whether
were
that
going
was
to
the case
in
or
and
not.
out of.
Sorry, Jackie, can you say again? We were talking over each other a little.
Yes, at the time we had no information of where those lines were going to go through and entry exit points. And so it was trying to get a bit more information so that we could see if there were impacts or,
I mean,
potential future impacts.
If it
that we
truly, if this thing truly does go through, I mean, it would make sense to bring it through the Hamilton Line, because there's nothing there. I mean,
So
it
let's
would
go ahead and,
make sense, so.
let's go ahead to the next slide, because we can actually have a diagram of these areas we're talking about.
Ace has got his hand up. Is that okay? I mean, we can go to the next
Yeah,
slide.
go ahead to the next slide.
Go ahead.
Asa, go ahead.
No, I just want to say I mirror the concerns of Kate, and at some of the meetings I was at in Stevenson, as I think this is a spearhead project. And once they get this in, there's going to be more to follow. Like, this is just the first one, because looking at where they're going to put the green energy projects on the east side of Oregon and Washington, this is going to lead to multiple lines coming down this way. Then that's where they're going to look at where these lines are going to go. Plus, this is only a proposed action. We don't know what the state is going to decide yet, and they can adjust where those transmission lines are going to come in and out. Thank you.
Okay, Jackie's got her hand up.
Yep, and that's fair. And when we had the discussion with the points of contact that we met with on this, we kind of agreed to kind of keep in contact as things developed, as our site investigation developed, as Kate brought up, like if we have a change in nature and extent, or Asa, that's a great point to make, that it could adjust. This is just what the current plan is. That's gone further in the process. So if there is a change, They're supposed to reach out to us. So we're supposed to keep kind of a touch point so we can be ahead of it and understand if there are changes.
Yeah, so this is the exit from the river. It's a little hard to see on our screen, but for folks that have the slides in front of them, it's probably a little easier to see. That's Stevenson side over there. Thanks, Mitch, again, for correcting. That's coming on the brains local launch. It's coming out there just kind of southwest of the Stevenson area. You can kind of see on that bottom right side of the picture where Cascade Locks is there. And if we go to the next slide, you'll be able to see the exit. So that kind of that landmass that's sitting around the middle or so of the picture on the north side of the river, there's that Hamilton Island area just exiting out of this kind of like southwestern side of it. So it'll still be underground is my understanding. There's the current design, or maybe I should say probably current concept is a better way to describe it. Still be underground in those areas, and then coming into the river. Bradford's just sort of barely visible on this, on like kind of the upper right side of the of this particular diagram. And this is I think this is about 2-ish or so, maybe a bit more miles down from the dam. Other questions, comments on this particular project? Okay. All right, we can move right along. Okay, so jumping into federal facility agreement. As of September 23rd, the federal facility agreement is fully effective. Yay, quick clap. All right. Thanks for doing me on that one. Very exciting for all the teams involved. And actually, this is not on this particular slide. Maybe it was in a future slide. We also had a new MOU signed in early September with the grant bond. So a new memorandum of understanding with one of the tribes in the area. On site management plan, we're working on resolving some comments from regulators and tribes, and that's on the revised site management plan that we do annually. Jumping into our project updates. So let's see here. We'll start with the upland operable unit. We are currently have our responses to regulator and tribal comments on the supplemental remedial investigation work plan provided back to those groups. They were provided in late October, and hopefully be finishing our back check around the end of this month. We could start field work as early as December on this particular work plan. It does. It is contingent, of course, on resolving comments and finalizing the work plan. But yes, we could have folks in the field this December. On the non-time critical removal action, we submitted the draft engineering evaluation cost analysis for regulator tribal review. Looking to have comments back this month as well.
What kind of things would fall under that, the non-time critical? What kind of studies or what kind of things would that be?
So the non-time critical removal action is essentially like actual remediation on the site. So looking to remove contamination as like a source of actually remove hazardous waste from the site as that kind of ongoing source of contamination.
So there's no time set to do that? Is that what that's saying?
There's because it says non-time critical,
Yeah.
it's I think usually Richard Lee is probably a better person to explain.
Okay, you got
time
hands up.
versus non-time critical, but I'll say it's a kind of a circle designation. We are looking to try to get folks in the field in late summer of 2024. So it's definitely not we're gonna pick the feet up and this will take a few years kind of thing.
I just kind of wondering what type of deal with all under that, soils, liquids, materials.
If I remember right, I think when we first started, Rich mentioned the gun range was under that, or am I?
Yeah,
Correct.
all four of the areas of potential concern on the upland operable unit would be touched by this. We can't definitively say that we'll be able to remove 100% contamination from all the upland areas. But the intent is to touch all. It can include sediment, actual like hazardous waste.
Rich and Jackie are waiting to chime in.
Okay. All right, I'll pause there and I'll
Rich has
let my
two hands
super
up.
smart people chime in. Rich, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, Rich, you go ahead and then I'll supplement if I need to.
Sure. I just want to say I apologize for not being there in person. I'm up in Seattle right now, but yeah. So the non-time critical is like Megan was saying, it's a circle of designation between non-time critical versus time critical, and time critical is emergency response where we have on-scene coordinators out there and they do a cleanup, and it's not the time critical removal action is an emergency response, so it's not going to get up as much as a non-time critical will. Non-time criticals have to meet the ARRs to the extent practicable, whereas a time critical removal action doesn't. But the main thing about the non-time critical is that it's not an emergency, but there is a risk to a release out into the environment, and there is a opportunity through the RSI and through the supplemental rod and things like that on the other side of that removal to do more remediation and to get the rest of the contamination down to lower than risk levels, basically. Yeah, and Jackie, you can speak to the areas that you're going to remove, sure.
And also with the time critical, there is a time, I'd say restriction, but like you're expected to be out in the field within 6 months of, designating it. And so that can be, again, that's where that emergency where you're not having to meet some of those requirements. So non-time critical can sometimes allude to it, we can just do it whenever we want. It's just that it doesn't have that time restriction. And as Rich said, we have a few more requirements. We're able to get more. As Megan said, we may not get everything, but that is the hope. With these kind of being discrete areas. So, we're looking to excavate the pistol range area, bulb slope, landfill, and a portion of the sandblast area. As part of that removal action, there'll be data collection. That data that's collected along with the data that we're doing in this supplemental RI field effort that's focused to other areas outside of that. All of that data gets incorporated into the supplemental RI report itself to determine if any of those areas still need further action or not. Like I said, because we're focused on that source, so that's that soil, the contaminated soil that's in that area. We're hoping that by doing this, we can eliminate a future response action, but that is always a possibility.
So it sounds like that because of the location mainly is kind of what's pushing this towards the non-time critical, because it's going to be tough to get 100%. I mean, it's not going to happen, but I can see it makes sense now to hear it that way. So thanks.
Yep. And then to follow up, Kate, the question that you had earlier, with the public comment period, you know, we're pushing a pretty aggressive schedule, for this to try to get out in the field by the end of next summer. So if we are able to maintain our current schedule, we're hoping for the public comment period to start in January. It's our
Okay.
best case scenario.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jackie. I was just about to loop back to that. Sounded like there might have been one more question coming in.
No, just somebody joining.
Okay.
So then at this time, we currently don't have any time critical removal actions.
Yeah, that's correct.
Did we have any and have been resolved?
No, Rich, correct me if I'm wrong. I think time critical removal action is usually something that would be like, imminent threat of like contamination spreading, like oil spills or, well, maybe not oil spills, but, you know, something similar of that nature.
The thought that's coming to mind
No.
is the bulb slope, when the bulbs were actually still there. Was that?
I don't know that that was considered a time critical removal action. We did have previous removal actions. In the, I believe it was like the early thousands and then the kind of mid-late thousands.
I would say that hey, this is Rich. The bulb slope probably wouldn't fall under a time critical. I mean, for time criticals, there has to be an imminent risk to human health, right? Things have to be on fire.
Gotcha. Okay.
Or there has to be like active hazardous material and principal threat waste getting into the environment and stuff like that. If there was an earthquake and half the landfill fell off into the river and was exposed and was, falling off into the river, that'd probably be a case where we would say, okay, you need to go out there and remove that and do it critically, time critically, and that's an emergency thing. But for most of the stuff that's like a time critical, you're talking about oil spills and tanker trucks, capsizing and things like that. It's really, really major events that you got to get a control of. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think event is a great word to use there versus Bradford Island is not a specific kind of event that just happened all of a sudden. Okay. Let's chat about the river operable unit. So under the supplemental remedial investigation phase 1, in October, we had a deployment of some current meters. Those will be retrieved a little later this month. We also deployed some sediment traps. So we're deploying sediment traps to capture the spillway being closed to see how the sediment moves in that condition. We were also collecting some sediment traps that had already been out, and those sediment traps were collecting the spillway being open and how the sediment moved in that condition. So pick some up, drop some off. Those sediment traps will be in the water for a couple more months, probably picking those up around December, January timeframe. For phase 2, we're still working on developing that work plan, looking to start the internal review soon. So that'll be the CORS team doing that initial review of the work plan, making comments and resolving those before it starts into regulator and tribal review. I believe. Right. On Cascades Island preliminary assessment, so we provided responses to comment as well as a revised preliminary assessment out to regulators and pipes. We got that out in a little, I think around the late October, October 22nd as well. And we did get some indication from one of our tribes that they requested a little bit more time for completing their back check. So that's not back to us just yet. Hopefully by the end of the month, we could have a back check there, but we do want to try to focus people as much as we can, especially on the upland OU, so we can keep that non-time critical removal action moving as quickly as possible. That's not going to delay us going forward with Cascades Island. That'll still move through its process. On community involvement plan, we had some additional comments responded to and revisions. We provided those back to, they've been provided back to the 4 organizations here. So those are the ones that provided us comments on the community involvement plan. Oh, and here was our update about Confederate Tribes of Grand Ronde. It was September 9th, we were able to sign a memorandum of understanding with them. So like with Yakima Nation and with the Cowlitz tribe, essentially gives them meaningful participation in our technical and programmatic processes.
On the Cascade Island EA, I guess my question would be, what triggered that and what are you looking for?
Oh, I actually do not know the history off the top of my head. There are several different areas in Cascade Island that are essentially areas that we were able to confirm there was contamination in those areas historically. So the intent is to move on to a remedial investigation. So basically the same phase as our river and upland operable units. Once we finalize this particular document, this preliminary assessment, which we're quite close to now.
Yeah.
The Corps will be recommending that as a new operable unit under Bradford Island.
And Cascade Island is the one right below the second powerhouse, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Yeah, Jackie, go ahead.
So to kind of answer Mitch's question a little bit more, there's a few different things that kind of triggered the PA. This is something that the tribes had asked about for a while, as well as some questions internally from operations folks. And so it was best for the Corps to decide to move forward with doing this preliminary assessment, which basically is looking at all of the historical uses and activities directly on that island to determine if there was enough sufficient information to move forward with an assessment or investigation. And so the PA is again more of that kind of historical documents, looking and interviews and things like that determine based on what we can find out if the moves forward in the process. Now again, Bradford's already a listed site, but sometimes the Corps still uses these PAs as a way to again just document that historical the historical information so that it's there. So like I said, we're moving forward, understanding that there were activities that could contribute, or based on what we know, like in one area in particular, we do know that there's contamination. So we feel like, we need to keep moving through the process. So that's why that was triggered.
Is there any discussion going on or has went on about Hamilton Island or North Bonneville?
Specifically
For a PA?
Well, currently.
Jackie, if
anything-
I can chime in there if you like.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Rich.
So Hamilton Island is a closed Superfund site, so we can't just go in and start poking holes in it. We'll have to go through the process of a reassessment, is what it's called, which involves a little bit of coordination with our site assessment branch. The people that came and assessed the site and did the first preliminary assessment for Bradford Island would be the same people that go in and look at Hamilton Island to see if there's anything there. But we can't really just point to it and say do it, right? We have to see if there's a risk there, if there's actual contaminants leaving the environment and things like that. So It has to be part of we have to kind of see an impact before we start triggering the site reassessment. But it's on our radar, and the RPM that's in charge of that has known about it, and it's already known in our management that we may have to open that site back up and do a reassessment.
Is, when you say Hamilton Island, was when they did the construction of the second powerhouse and everything was hauled down there, was Hamilton Island part of that Hamilton Island landfill before the city of North Bonneville become its new location? Was that considered the Hamilton Island landfill, or is North Bonneville landfill a separate landfill that came from the second powerhouse in Army Corps?
Wait, do you mean North Bonneville Municipal Landfill?
No, the city limits of North Bonneville, from my understanding, was filled in from the project from the second powerhouse, but so when they created Hamilton Island landfill, I was told, or have been told and always understood, that when they created the new city limits of North Bonneville, that was built under the ruse of the Hamilton Island landfill. Or was North Bonneville, because what I'm looking for is the as-built for North Bonneville and the as-built for Hamilton Island landfill. But is it one, would that be one as-built? Because prior to North Bonneville taking over, that was the landfill site, Hamilton Island, as far as I knew. But now Hamilton Island landfill is a much smaller area.
I don't, from my understanding, the portion on the southernmost portion of Hamilton Island that's closest to the river, that's a pretty open area, that's the landfill. And that was filled up with the demolition debris from the original North Bonneville. That was originally what is now Cascade Islands. That was removed. That area was demolished and removed, and that was put into what is Hamilton Island, and what is North Bonneville now.
Waterway.
What's that?
And to create that waterway that goes north of Cascades Island.
Right. So North Bonneville now is situated a little bit north from Hamilton Island, but I don't think that it's built on top of it. And Hamilton Island was from the construction debris.
Right, that's where I'm confused, is because if you go back when this was happening, before North Bonneville was relocated, they took the construction bill from Bonneville Dam and the whole project up there and created and filled in the town of North Bonneville. And then they released it to the city of North Army Corps, what I understood, released it to North Bonneville. So North Bonneville is part of the Hamilton Island landfill. According to the way that I could be completely off base here, but that's
if they did some earthworks for Bonneville and then used that excavated earthworks to fill in areas for what's the new Northern Bonneville, I think that's different than the construction debris for tearing down the old site of North Bonneville and putting all the wood and concrete and other materials in the landfill. I'm not sure. I haven't seen any old plans for the original construction of North Bonneville or the site that is currently North Bonneville.
Right.
So I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure of that answer.
I haven't been able to get them either. That's the problem, is I can't seem to find them anywhere. But I thought maybe somebody else might know. Didn't sound like it. That's all I got on that one.
As to the conclusion of technical updates, are there any other questions regarding those technical updates? And from our RAB members? Okay, not hearing any from other community members or other folks on the line. Okay, great. We can jump into our community involvement updates. As we talked about a little bit before, we do have posters displayed at our visitor centers now. And I will follow up with our rangers about where we can move these to make these more visible, what our options are there. We've also got copies of the resident fish advisory brochures included. A bit hard to see on our screen. You might be able to see at home that we have the pregnancy brochures in one of the posters, just under like a kind of little slot that's underneath the poster about the fish advisory. And we've got other copies of the fish advisory as well for folks that can just take them home. We've got multiple languages there at the visitor center. And then, of course, we have print materials have been sent out to Oregon Health Authority and Multnomah. I have an unfortunate update on the second bullet that says all of our advisory signs are distributed. We did get, for clarity and all cards on the table, we got a return shipment that was on its way to Washington Department of Health. We got the return right around the time that our slides were finalized. So I'm working this week. It turned out to be a very simple typo that my point of contact over there put in their address. So we just have to fix it and resend it. So hopefully by the end of the week, we'll have those shipment repurchased, have those boxes back out the door for Washington Department of Health. And then we've also got webpage developments underway. I think that's all we've got on our community involvement updates. Any questions on those?
Jackie's typing a message.
On one fish advisory, the little yellow area where it says the caution part about resident fish that don't eat or whatever.
Yeah.
I got a couple of people that I've given to that have questioned. I said, I don't know, I read it the other way, but they're reading it as it says to not eat these other fish, but to eat the salmon, steelhead, and migratory fish. I said, I don't think that's what it's saying. I mean, I don't think nobody's gonna step out on a limb and tell people to eat those fish that are going through the dam.
It's probably, if we have Dana on the line, I think Dana can talk to this a little bit more smartly, but it is an intention of it to be a warning against the resident fish, so the fish that don't migrate out to the ocean.
Yeah.
And then Oregon Health Authority does consider steelhead, shad, and salmon to be safe health interests.
Right, but the way that they told it to me is, and I didn't read it the same way that they did. Yeah, they're telling me, they're reading it, is that they're telling us to eat these fish. And I said, I wouldn't tell anybody to eat those fish. So it might be something that we might look at rewriting.
Dana, do you have any, just on, how I explained it, do you have any comments on that or want to add anything to that?
I don't have much to add. I think that you captured it well. It is correct. Salmon, steelhead, and shad are not included in the resident fish advisory. And so those are the safe and healthy options that we want to point people towards eating if you are going to be fishing in that area. So yeah, I think you got it. You summarized it well, Megan. I'm not sure that I understand the feedback. I'm sorry, I'm on my phone, so I can't see who was just speaking, but it sounded like the signs seem to imply that we were encouraging people to eat the resident fish. Is that right?
No, they were, the way that the people that I give the sign to at a couple stores, they said that they think that it's telling them to eat, like telling you to eat the migratory fish. And I don't think that you're directing people to eat it. Like, I think you're saying it's safe to eat. That's the way that I understood it, but the way the other people were telling me about it was completely different than what I was reading. So that's why I just saying, I read it the other way. Like they're migratory fish, eat them at your own risk. But you're not saying, but the way they read it says, it says eat. And so they're saying, eat these fish.
Okay, so
I think it's the ruling is.
Instead of a recommendation that these are healthy fish to eat, Instead, it might be read as a directive, like you should.
That's what
you
they were
should
telling
eat
me,
these
yes, and it says eat these fish, and I'm like, I don't think that's what they meant. So, that's just what, I've had two people tell me at the fish store that that's the way they actually took a pen and wrote in there, it says, don't eat them. And I'm going like, oh, interesting. Whatever.
Okay,
Um,
well, thanks for that feedback.
Yeah.
That's
I don't-
definitely good for folks to know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Kate Murphy has her hand up.
Yeah, Kate, go ahead.
Thank you. First of all, I just want to say thank you to everybody involved in this. I know this feels like kind of a basic thing to have available, but it feels like I see this as like really hopeful progress for educating the public to have these signs and fish advisories more readily available. So thanks everyone who was supporting the progress of that. Just a little bit more context for some of the thinking around some of the language in the fish advisories. There was a fish advisory group that Oregon Health Authority put together, took a lot of feedback from a whole bunch of different groups, from regulatory agencies to community groups. And one of the things that had come up with the previous fish advisory was that the language, there was concern about it affecting folks, and particularly tribal members who make a living off selling migratory fish, which can be a healthy choice. And I think there's a lot of different factors that are taken into consideration, the weighing the exposure with the benefits of eating fish as a food option. But yeah, I think it's certainly a good thing to be aware of and to clarify for people, but just want to acknowledge that a lot of folks put a lot of effort into trying to like dial that language in so that it was being mindful of a lot of different aspects, because we want to make sure these fish advisories stay up too, and that they're not affecting that there's not unintended consequences of affecting people's livelihoods and things like that, just for a little more context.
Thanks, Kate. Other questions on community involvements, either resident fish advisory or otherwise? Okay. Move on to the next slide. All right, so we have a couple meeting dates set out into the future. We have planned for virtual only meetings in January and March. Those will still run from 5 to 7. I think if we're continuing to follow our every 2 month drumbeat, that will put us on at May 13th and July 8th for those two. We're assuming we're going to be back at a hybrid style meeting, so there'll be an in-person portion here at Cascade Locks, as well as virtual availability for those folks who want to call in from home. Any concerns with the schedule moving forward?
I thought we had talked about the bi-monthly thing up until March, and then after March, we were gonna go back to every month.
I believe it was dependent on the progress of everything and if the Corps had any new updates. I think we always mentioned that if there was an update in December that merited a meeting, we would have one as well.
Yeah, there's, so if there are needs to meet between every other month, if there's something that comes up, the Corps that we need to present to the RAB, we'll, let folks know and we can call an ad hoc meeting. The vote was to otherwise be every other month.
Okay.
And I'm still 5 months away, but I believe by the time we have our May, 7 months away, our May meeting, the first 2-year cycle for the original members kicks in. So I don't know if we want to plan for that. I think it's myself, Kate, Carl.
Wow.
I don't remember. Yeah, I know. It flew by. Yeah, it's the thought I had earlier today.
Nice.
I know we can renew for 2 years, but just for preparations if some people don't want to stay on for another 2 years.
Yeah, Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. For those folks who first joined the RAB, something to think about if you, are looking to renew your membership as a board member, or if you're looking to exit at that time frame. So, good thing for folks to start considering.
Yeah, and I don't remember what that process was. If you want to renew your 2 years, does it go in front of the board for reapproval, or I don't remember off the top of my head.
I don't remember off the top of my head either. I can definitely look into that, and I think everybody's got a copy
Yeah.
of the operating guide.
Generally, Grabs ask for a minimum 2-year commitment. And I'll review our operating procedures as well, but often it'll work something like you have a 2-year lease and then you're month to month. So you just continue on.
Yeah, no, I'm just, again, I don't know who's all gonna do what. I just don't want to see an exodus of people at that 2-year mark and kind of back to where we were 6 months ago, trying to find more members. So.
Mhm.
So you're telling everyone. Renew.
Friendly
Renew
reminder.
your option.
Just, yeah, friendly reminder.
Any questions about our upcoming meetings? Let's move on into open discussion.
All right, let's move into general RAB discussion. So before we move into general RAB discussion, I want to make a comment about regarding email communications and requests between RAB members and both federal and state agencies. To improve collaboration and streamline our communication, please keep discussions and requests within the meeting forum rather than taking them offline through emails. By keeping conversations in the public forum, we ensure that everyone, including RAB members and the general public, have visibility into ongoing discussions, decisions, and action items. This approach reduces redundant back and forth emails, minimizes misunderstanding, and keeps everyone aligned. It also helps us maintain an accessible record of discussions for future reference, making it easier for all team members, including those who may join later, to stay informed. Let's work together to keep communications transparent, efficient, and within the meeting space whenever possible. I want to emphasize that this is in no way intended to stifle everyone's passion or pursuit of answers in the Bradford Island restoration process. So I know we have a lot of passions. There's been a lot of emails back and forth on a lot of topics. There's concern that it may be, as a public body, with our job is to inform the public, we're having a lot of offline emails and it's not actually being shared with the public. So I want to make sure those discussions are happening in this setting right here. That makes sense, Megan?
It does.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
thanks, Jordan. Appreciate that. And so with that, we can move into RAB discussion.
So any open discussion from RAB members?
I have a few questions I'd like to try to get answered, or
Yep.
not answered today, but maybe answered in our next meetings. The first one is, how much money's been spent on the cleanup as of 11/12/24? The second one that I'm looking for are the as-built of North Bonneville, like the cuts and fills of the town of North Bonneville, and also the as-built of Hamilton Island cuts and fills. The next question, how much is the US Army Corps paying for the cleanup? What percentages, like, are there 50%, 10%, 100% type of deal? What's the Army Corps paying? The other one was, I think maybe Rich answered this already, is Hamilton Island under review for toxic landfill that was placed in that landfill? And then, so that gets the other one was the Hamilton Island as-built, the cuts and fills for that landfill.
I can answer some of those pretty easily off the start in terms of how much budget has been spent, how much money has been spent on this project. That's not something I can share. The federal government does not share that kind of information with the public. I can tell you in regards to percentage of funding, how the project is funded. So We get 50% of our funds are from operations and maintenance appropriated funds. So basically from Congress. 50% is funded by Bonneville Power Agency. They used to do direct funding, basically like they would directly send the core funding. They're not directly funding starting in, I believe it's 2020. Oh, actually, it's of this fiscal year, which started in October. They're no longer directly funding. So instead, we the core, we go to appropriated Congress and make that request, just like we would for our other funds.
Then we're still in agreement for 50-50, but then they reimburse the treasury later.
Army Corps reimburses the treasury.
No, Bonneville Power Agency reimburses the treasury since they're no longer directly providing
Megan,
funds.
Victoria has her hand up. Let's let her speak to that.
Yeah, Victoria, please.
Yeah, hi everybody. Victoria Frankeny with Office of Council. Just to kind of add on to what Jackie and Megan were saying. So per the FFA, the Corps is responsible to seek sufficient funds in order to keep the project on schedule, right? So we are asking for the amount of funds that we need fiscal year to fiscal year. And so we're making sure that covers all of the costs. Now, speaking to sort of BPA reimbursement, as Jackie was alluding to, we don't get that directly and plan for that kind of moving forward with these projects. What happens is we sort of identify what that number is, what that 50% cost share is, and then BPA reimburses the treasury. And so it goes back into the general fund that funds, you know, the agencies overall. So if there's any sort of concern, I can't speak directly as to BPA's process, but I can tell you that what the Corps does is the Corps ensures that we get sufficient funding for these projects up front. So we're not waiting on BPA to provide us money to move forward if that's a concern.
But the public will never know what was spent on this project, is what you're telling me.
So our requirement in the FFA is that we have to provide that information to EPA to show what we've requested and what we get approved of, and to show that we've requested sufficient funding.
Yeah, and those materials are deliberative. We don't generally release that outside of the agency because there's a lot of considerations, not just at our level, but, you know, also moving on its way up to Congress before we get those funds. So those are pretty much confidential.
And then for the Hamilton Island review, we spoke to that earlier. In regards to as-built for North Bonneville, Hamilton Island, we may have those available in the Portland District Library. So I have to go see if those are available. Otherwise, I think that the process would be a FOIA request.
I did
Well,
one
I think the other piece of that,
North Bonneville.
yeah, the other piece of that is that removal of North Bonneville and its relation to Hamilton Island Superfund site is outside the purview of this RAB. So that information can be requested, but this RAB is not the forum to do that, because at this point that is a separate site.
But the Hamilton Island site, you think you may have?
The Portland District Library may have as-built. Portland District maintains a pretty large library of, there's both printed and digitally available material. And there's actually the digital you can actually see from your home computer. There's also, you can visit in person to see what they have available. And you can search the, you can like basically search the library to see if they have in person, printed or digital materials. For the age of those, it's possible they have been digitized, possibly not. I'm not totally sure. Sorry, go ahead.
No, say any other topics that RAD members would like to bring up? Any, I guess, non-voting, non-community member RAD members? Anything they want to bring up?
There's like in the chat. Dina Horton. Do you want to talk about it or should I just read it, Dana? She says, curious about the conversations that were had offline and out of the public eye. What were the nature of the discussions and actions that were taken as a result of those discussions? Appreciate the effort to keep RAB work transparent to the public.
Sure. So the emails we got were basically like requests for information. We didn't make any decisions or changes of direction in our path forward based on the request for information. And yes, we do want to have them available here so people can kind of understand both what business the RAB is doing, but these questions can also spark other questions from other folks. It might make you think of something that you are also interested in. So it can provide other conversations, other feedback in this forum. So we will continue to look to have those discussions here.
Dina says, thanks, I'm not able to talk because she has a bad cold.
Oh,
So she said, thanks.
all right, rest up, Deanna. I hope you get better soon.
On your Bradford Island public comment box, if the questions are directed to that, then it becomes available to the public. And how do you guys display public comment?
So
In the minutes?
we don't share emails that go to that public comment box with the public. The comment box is basically for any member of the public to ask questions about the project, get more information, whatever reason they might be looking to contact, specifically in this case, the Corps, about this project. That's a form they can use to contact the USACE about that. And of course, they can also bring questions and comments here.
Yeah, and I think, were we using that as a way that like RAB members have submitted applications as to that?
Yeah.
That
mhm.
email?
Yes, it is. It is a place that I think basically everybody has initially reached out to provide their application except for the first group of folks. But all subsequent members would have submitted their applications there. And it's also a way that we get new emails for folks that want to be added to the mailing list.
I was just trying to figure out if there's public comment. So the RAB, or if somebody sent a public comment to the Army Corps,
Mm-hmm.
and it's about the Bradford Island cleanup, that public comment wouldn't be then given to the RAB members?
We're talking about like a public comment, like during the public review period.
Oh, okay.
I'm actually, so I will say, I'm not actually sure if kind of like with the FFA public review period, if those comments are typically kind of scrubbed and shared the way that they were for the FFA. But there would be for those like public review periods, there will be like directions put out about like a process of how to provide your public comment. That said, if there's other like comments folks want to make outside public reviews, the RAB is probably I would think the best place to do that if they wanted to specifically make comments to the Corps, but also in a forum where the public would be able to,
That's kind
be
of
able
what
to
I'm
hear that dialogue.
trying to figure out. I know like our county commissioners in Skamania County,
Mhm.
they passed a resolution that if you send a public comment in for the board meeting, upcoming meeting or past meetings, that you now have to file a public records request in order to see the public comment that was sent in to the commissioner. So I'm just wondering how, if somebody sent something in to the RAB, how would the public know and how could they access that?
I think if
So I
someone
think- so I think Megan, what he's asking is, so if someone were to email us in that box, if we felt that it was a question that we needed to bring to the RAB or information to the RAB, you know, that's the Corps' responsibility to do. No one necessarily needs to make like a special request. Just up to this point, it's not readily utilized. And as I said, it's mostly been used for RAB applications to be submitted, which we have shared with the RAB because that is relevant for the RAB. So we just kind of look to see, I mean, if it's kind of a judgment call on, well, if they're just trying to say, hey, you know, who's the point of contact? If I have questions on this, that may not be something that, you know, we need to share, but we can. Again, this is supposed to just be people trying to, again, be added to a list, want to submit a RAB application, have general questions about the public. It's just not, we don't get a lot of traffic. But when we do, it definitely, if it's relevant to the RAB, that would absolutely be our responsibility to bring it to the RAB.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's if someone's saying, I would want to have this, public comment go to the RAB, or like have the input I'm providing in this email goes to the RAB, that's a very different story.
But it'd still be sent to that email address, correct?
If someone was using that email address to say like, I would like to share this comment with the RAB.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I think, and the same would go, I mean, just with, again, the purpose of the RAB, if someone from the community had reached out to one of the individual RAB members and had brought something to the table and they are bringing it to the rest of the RAB, that's just kind of on them to do. We don't see all of their email, and, you know, they're kind of getting to make that call that something came in. It's kind of in that way, because we don't put our personal email out on the website. So it's a way for them to reach the Corps, but it would go for any RAB member. If someone from the community reached out and said, I think this is a topic that should be brought to the RAB, or I have this question, and that RAB member felt that it needs to be brought to the RAB, then that's everybody's kind of personal responsibility with that, any communication from the public.
Ace has got his hand up.
Yeah, Asa, go ahead. Asa, you might be on mute if you're speaking.
Oh, yeah. Can you hear me now? Sorry.
Yes.
I'm used to the Zoom controls. No, I just wanted to clarify something that was inaccurate, is that the Skamania County Board of Commissioners did not pass a resolution or ordinance stifling public comment. It's that when public comment contained libel or slander or things about other members of the public, and then we republished that as being the second publisher, we were liable for those comments. And so under the Open Public Meeting Act, the decision was made to, if people want those comments, they can request them, but we could no longer secondary publish those because of the libel. That's why that decision was made. And there was no ordinance or resolution. It is we are still within the purview of the Open Public Meeting Act. And you can say whatever you want about electeds, that's fair game. But when it went to other members of the general public, county employees, that's where we had to draw the line. Thank you.
All right.
Any comments from the general public? Okay, not hearing anything. I guess last call from everybody. Any other comments, concerns, questions? Okay, not hearing anything. We will adjourn this meeting until January 14th, virtual only. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Computer battery just made it through the meeting.
Thank you.
All right. 20% left, and that's the point where it starts to puke.
Oh, yeah.
20% left. That always needs two.
Just to be clear,